What about when it's not a new job that you're applying for, but your current position? Increasingly, public servants are being asked to reapply for their own positions. But are employers risking losing good staff by putting them through this process, especially when it's year on year? David Harrington is from Horizon 1 Recruitment and is with us on Drive to discuss this, and I welcome your experiences as well. 1300 681 666 is the phone number to call. David Harrington, appreciate your time.
Good afternoon, Adam. How are you?
How common is it that public servants will have to reapply for their own jobs in the current age?
Yeah, look, it definitely depends on the direction of public service. We've seen it quite a bit more recently with efficiency dividends, reviews and various different downsizing options going on. It's been, I guess, reasonably common.
Is it understandable that it happens when, as you say, with the downsizing of the workforce in a department, the bosses want to find the best people for the positions that still exist?
Oh, definitely, and I think public service it's still a business, and they have to have an option available to them to resize their workforce, I guess, appropriately to the needs of the business. So they're a little bit restricted in some of the options they have for the way they move staff around. So this is definitely one they turn to when they need to do it on a fairly big scale.
Are we seeing it more in the private sector as well, David?
It does happen in the private sector, but I think the private sector, it doesn't happen on such a big scale, certainly not here in Canberra, because the private sector is a much smaller place here in Canberra. But I think the private sector is probably a little bit less restricted in terms of the options they have available to them to resize their workforce. So we probably don't see it as much, but redundancies and reapplication jobs does happen, but not as much, I don't think.
So, a lot of people in Canberra might have been through this process. For those who have not, generally, how does it work?
That depends. If you're talking public service specifically, it depends on the agency, but typically the agency will advise the staff that are at risk or need to be redeployed. They'll advise those people specifically of this happening, and then they'll lead them through a process which really depends on their it has to be in line with the public the service values and employment principles, but also the individual agencies have a little bit of room about how they manage that. But usually HR gets involved, and there'll be consultations, and the people affected will be advised of the process and taken through a step-by-step process to reapply for their positions or whatnot. But there is choices available to them. Some people may choose not to reapply.
Let's say someone's been working in an existing position for a while and they are reapplying and get to the interview stage. Is it highly likely that they'll be interviewed by people they've been answerable to or work on a similar level to for years?
Oh, look, normally the people carrying out those sort of interviews will be senior. Once upon a time, I guess they could have been peers, but normally the people carrying out those interviews at the time would be senior people in that department or area. So I wouldn't necessarily think it would be people that they were on the same level or were at a lower level, no.
Do you think it's fair that employees should have to reapply for their own positions, especially if it's more than once?
Look, I guess that depends on perspective and how often it happens, but certainly I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It does encourage people to think about the value they offer in their role. And, often when you see people in long-term positions, which you do often see in the public service, they don't necessarily have to examine that on a regular basis. So, look, it depends how it's carried out. It's a change process. It really depends on how the agency involved handles it. If they handle it sensitively, if they consult, and if they take people through it in an understanding way, I don't think it's necessarily a bad process.
Yeah, okay. Interested to hear from you if you've been through a reapplication process, if you've been acting in a role and then have to reapply for the job when it's advertised, or if year on year your position just needs to be reapplied for whatever reason. I've been through it a couple of times myself and found it a little unnerving, I must confess, on a personal level. 1300 681 666 is the phone number you can call. The SMS 0467 922 666. David Harrington from Horizon 1 Recruitment is with us discussing the modern age of reapplying for your role. David, is it likely that some employers are risking inadvertently losing good staff members because they demand that they reapply for their jobs?
Yes, that's definitely the case. We do see it quite often when particularly with the public service, or when they're going through redundancy or redeployment processes, they will lose high performers. High performers generally are aware of the options available to them and also aware that they can go elsewhere and get other positions, particularly if they have specialist skill sets. So that does commonly happen, yes.
Is that a risk that in some cases shouldn't be taken, especially if you've got someone who has corporate experience of a particular department, who has really valuable gathered knowledge that could be passed on to, say, younger staff members?
Yeah, I guess it depends on individual circumstances of the organisation doing it. I guess they'd want to be pretty sure that if they're going to go down this road, that they have the skills and they have the relationships with the key people in place, that it's not going to happen to them. But in the spirit of fairness, I guess when they roll these things out, they can't necessarily be sure. So it's a difficult one too. It's a difficult call.
Sure is.
We have seen it backfire, and we have seen some difficult positions arise out of taking this route.
Interesting to hear the perspectives on that, David Harrington. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
David Harrington is from Horizon 1 Recruitment Agency on 666 Drive. There it is, 4.5